Right. Good afternoon, everybody. And just while everybody's getting online, I just want to say a very warm welcome to Meredith Wiseman, Senior Lecturer from Monash University in Australia, and give her a chance to introduce herself just now. But guys, as always, this is our sort of Friday lunchtime webinar, and really just need to know where you're from today. So let us know how you're getting on today. Please just give us some love in the chat. Tell us which university you're from, and then also specifically tell us, what sort of aspects of student stress you're interested in. Are you dealing with something at the moment? Is there a specific aspect of your life that you'd like some input into? We've got Meredith; she's an expert in this. She's researching this. We certainly need your help as well to give her some data points, and we'll provide a link to her survey in due course. So let's just double check we've got everybody coming online and giving us some love, saying hi, so that we can respond to you and see which universities we've got coming onto the session today. And as always, maybe just while you're doing that, a bit of an introduction if this is your first webinar, and of course also welcome to those people that are watching the replay of this, and the recording is available at exactly the same link. So the brand that we run here and the YouTube channel is called the Student Success Coach. So we have courses, we have coaching, we have members-only Facebook group. That's our community through which I actually met Meredith, and through which we had a few chats to have some discussions and get her on the show. And I'll be providing further links, and I've got a few courses on promotion, but we'll add those into the chat as we go through the session. So Meredith, we want to talk about your research. We want to talk about student wellness. We want to answer the questions that people are going to ask today. But before we do that, some introduction to yourself, please.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, Peter. G'day, everyone. I guess I should start like that. From sunny Australia, and I'm down in a state called Victoria, where we've been in lockdown for pretty much most of 2020. So we've had a very challenging year. Students have particularly found it challenging as we all adapted to moving to online learning and online study. So my background, I'm actually a health professional. I'm a pharmacist, worked in about over 20 years in hospital pharmacy, and a few little bits and pieces in community pharmacy as well. So my background is in care, and as part of that, in my previous role to being a lecturer at uni, I was also the wellness lead for our hospital pharmacy department, of which we had around 250, a large hospital, 250 staff members in our department. And it's a very high acute tertiary referral centre for a lot of trauma and transplant, lots of different specialties, burns, etc. So high levels of stress, and so I became the wellness lead. Don't know how I got that role at the time, but what I found was I had a lot of our staff that would approach me, and I didn't have the skills to help them at the time. I was a good listener, but I couldn't give back what I needed to give back. So I started researching what I needed to do to be able to help them, and then came across coaching. And so I've become a professional coach, or I'm still studying. So I'm like you, and enjoying the challenge and journey of studying again after a long time, and balancing those the life circle of family, and keeping up with my healthcare profession as well as coaching and lecturing as well. So lots of bits and pieces in there.
Wonderful. Okay, great. Meredith, thanks for that introduction. It certainly feels like you're well qualified, to talk about student stress and wellness. And, you're obviously going to extend that with the research that you're doing. And we're certainly willing to help you and get the data from this community, which I think you found had some similarities to the work that you were doing, which is absolutely fantastic. So Meredith, let's just kick off now and really help, the students and everyone that's on the call today. We've all experienced, quite a traumatic, 12 months or so. I think it's been universal in terms of the lockdowns and the impact on studies and moving that online. And at the best of times, postgraduate studies certainly is a very lonely journey. And, we've always, relished the opportunity to go onto campus. And if you were studying undergrad, you had modules and lectures, you had that social interaction. You had a chance to offload, grab a bite to eat with somebody, grab a coffee in the canteen, etc. And maybe, some universities that's starting to come back a bit, but I think we've lost that. So in addition to the stress of just getting through the volume of stress of work, we've lost the interaction with students. Now, going forward, Meredith, how can students, take practical steps to manage their stress levels?
I guess the first thing I'd say, Peter, is to realize the positive influences that 2020 has given us. So instead of looking at it as all the challenges that we had that came, but it also gave us a lot of positives that we can connect via Zoom or via StreamYard, which I've been introduced to today via Peter after a few difficulties. But also, it gives you those challenges that stretch you to be able to try something different. And without those challenges, we don't come across each other. I wouldn't have met Peter or yourselves. So think about those positives first, and then consider those as strengths that you've accomplished over 2020, and then take those forward. So yes, we still have a lot of work to do, and we still have all of our connections that we've lost. But if we can also see that some positives have come out, that's one thing that we can hang our hat on.
Yeah, Meredith, fantastic. Yeah.
So the other thing is, with those changes, we need to reflect on how we balance the foundations of stress. So looking at, our sleep patterns and our diet and our exercise or movement, particularly as study, which is we're sitting or standing a lot, and how we contribute to our exercise patterns while we're studying, and how we can adapt to this new environment, or how we can connect with others to be able to continue to have that exercise in our lives, to ensure that because exercise gives us so much in terms of our mental health as well as our physical health.
Meredith, thank you. That's so helpful. And just Francois posted a question there, which I hope you can see on the screen there, where he talks about lockdown stress as a real problem for him. And I think, like everybody else, he finds that because we're all online now, those boundaries have blurred. So you wake up in the morning and the stress starts. A lot of us are probably now checking our emails in bed and realizing, oh, we already missed a meeting now, because I know in our organization, we sort of instituted some guidelines about the fact that meetings couldn't start too early, whereas previously we would be in the office and we wouldn't be able to set a meeting because we knew people had to get through traffic and arrive and manage all the rest of it and so on. Now those boundaries are gone. So how do we manage that stress, and how do we help Francois with this practical challenge that he's got here of waking up and that stress is already starting to build on his shoulders?
I think it's a really hard one, but one of the first things you need to do with stress is learn to avoid. So if those things are coming at us and stress is building, we're not going to be able to work well. So we need to be able to set our own boundaries and be able to say no. 6 o'clock in the morning to be answering emails, or to be, going through trying to appraise papers to a deadline, or whatever study you're up to is outside your boundaries, and we have to set personal boundaries as well as have the university boundaries. So I think the value is in having those personal boundaries, and the harder bit is sticking to them, but first we have to do them.
Yeah, and to the point of sticking to those deadlines and boundaries, as you talk about here, Evine says that COVID-19 stressed really hard to learn through online, and being the first time for us. I mean, I actually sat with a group of students from a local Wits business school yesterday. They're going through a postgraduate diploma, and lockdown for 2020. That same class before them was they had to get internships and so on, and the stress of now getting a job or an internship or contract work as part of that postgraduate diploma during 2020 was catastrophic for them. So we were talking through the class of 2021 and how they needed to almost get ahead and take advantage of these things and adapt, as you were saying, to the opportunities that 2020 has given us now. But to Evine here, where she acknowledges that she's sometimes missed classes or assignments, etc. And I think we've relied on the physical form factor of things like a notice board at university. You'd always walk past that notice board in the morning, and there was a habit that formed, and you could check that, and the lecturer would say, I'm going to post the assignments up on the notice board. Now everything is literally through your phone or your laptop, and if you don't check that tab or that email, we've probably all got 2 or 3 inboxes, etc., or that calendar. It's all digital, but it's completely blurred now. So how do we help students get the focus back that they need to avoid missing the deadlines?
I guess it'll be different for every student, and students aren't alone in this. This is also for lecturers. We've had to adapt and learn the same kind of, we have our schedules on the wall. I had my whole calendar, my 2020 calendar,
Exactly.
Everything was on that. And I wished I could have taken it with me, but it was left on site and allowed back in. So we're all in similar boats, but what we do have is the ability to go, hey, okay, I'm going to walk through a day and think about what did I use, those physical things at university that I need to find in a different way. So it's being able to adapt and use different skills and different technologies, and it also allows you to realise what's valuable as well, those timetables or those schedules which you took for granted at university. So walking through a day is really valuable, and seeing what you can take away from what you used to do and bring new things into this new world that we have.
So what I'm hearing you say is that, and just linking to what you said earlier about the opportunities, is we probably thought 2020 was a bit temporary and we'd sort of be back to normal in 2021. And so we thought, okay, well, let's just get through 2020. And then, subconsciously we thought, well, we'll have all of those that we can rely on to manage our day and remind us and catch up with our friends, etc., and so on. But if it's going to become more permanent, we have to think about our home space compensating for what we've lost in terms of not going into varsity or into the office or into another physical space where we would have had those things. Now, the boundary issue still remains, because you've got your family life calendar, and then you've got your work life calendar, and then probably some other type of, so on and so forth. And people don't always have their own room even that they can spend time in, or when they're in a 1-bedroom, student flat somewhere on campus potentially. Where they will struggle to get that space and setup that they need. So, I mean, anything that you've learned or experiences or stories that you can relate to us about how students have adapted, and possibly those that have adapted a bit quicker and said, look, I need to set myself up from home now. Home is my university. Home is my work. Home is my family life. Any tips and tricks specifically for students where they've adapted a bit quicker than others maybe?
Probably more in reflection, Peter. We had some late sessions with the students last year with coaching, and we talked a lot about the online environment and the home environment, and we felt that debriefing, but also sharing, not just with our peers, but also with our supervisors, if you get the chance, to really connect and allow yourself to be open, that those boundaries are blended a little bit, and stretch your belief that they need to be separate, because maybe they don't, and maybe this will go forward. It'll be different for everyone, whether that works for them or not. But maybe it's a limiting belief that we need to have work separate and home separate. For example, right now here in Australia, for me. It's going on 9:30, and I'm sure my husband would like to walk through here to get to set up.
Get to the fridge.
Yeah. But that can't happen right now. So we do learn to adapt. But what I have found is just sharing those challenges with each other, but also understanding we're all going through a similar thing. And so being able to share. And what I found is that on a weekly basis is really good. If you can find someone in the group that you can talk to on a weekly basis, how have you dealt with this is really helpful. And then having a lecturer or a coach or someone within your faculty is another step ahead of that.
Yeah. So Meredith, I mean, maybe just from my perspective and what's helped me is, the principles of Kanban. And, I teach that in a course, and I'll just provide an access link to that for everybody to go and, enroll in that course and get some value from today. And that course is actually on promotion today, so you can get into it for free. But really, in a nutshell, and I certainly believe in having that physical form factor around your desk and your workspace, etc. And I don't rely entirely on what I can see on a screen to be organized. It's just that sort of traditional old 3 columns of saying, this is my list of things to do. This is what I'm working on. That's in progress. And then let's celebrate the column where it's done, and I just take a sticky note. And like I always say to my students and how I coach them is to don't set your expectations too high for what you can get done. Manage your tasks at a low level. And if it's 200 words for that assignment, that's your task for the next few days. Put that into the in progress column. And then when you sit down at your desk, you just look at your in progress column. Don't worry about everything that's on your to-do list or your backlog. Just focus on what's in your in progress column. As long as everything is in there, your mind is focused and you can get through that. And then by the end of the day, you can perform that physical act, which I think entrenches and reminds you of the accomplishment you made of moving that post-it note from the in progress column to the done column, and then if your family's walking by, exactly,
I was going to say that's a celebration in itself, just moving it across.
Moving those stickies. I mean, I was interviewing a senior lecturer from Wits University on the podcast, actually, and I'll put the link into the chat as well. But he was just saying that, he sort of also says to students, don't even try and complete 200 words. Just sit down at your desk. That's an accomplishment. And when we've got parents, that are also studying and they've got 2 or 3 kids running around that are also online and, doing their schoolwork at home, even just to sit down at your desk, and get 5-10 minutes that you can focus, that's a task. And I would put that at the top of your Kanban board, move that across. Okay, I've sat down at my desk. Now I can do 50 words. Once I've done 50 words, no one's calling me. I can get another 50 words done. I can get another 50 words done. So, and different strokes for different folks. I mean, we all have our own sort of, ways in which we adapt and manage our lives, I suppose. But Kanban's been very powerful for me.
Oh, fantastic, Peter. Another thing to add to that, I guess, is one of the strategies we use is that every day you set up and your tasks, as you say, might be different each day. So for that day, you may have research as you might want to write 50 words, but you may also have another task, and your priorities will change. So to do that, task building every day to some extent, say 10 or 15 minutes, just to prioritize, and that's all you're trying to achieve. If you get more done, fantastic, but don't try and have a list, as you said, that you're not trying to get it all done in one day. And it may change from day to day. One thing that didn't get done yesterday may not be a priority for tomorrow at all.
Sure.
Things change.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and I also, often talk to students, I have my own notebook with my lists and everything in there, but sometimes those lists can be intimidating. Even an email inbox is another list of someone else's tasks that they put on you, but you must manage what's actually in progress. What is it that is in some form of motion and you need to put some effort into in the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours. So Fleur says here, as postgraduate students, we've had to rely so much on self-motivation to keep achieving our goals and projects. It's been quite a challenge to try to stay disciplined every day for almost a year. And I think we chatted about this in a previous session, but, Fleur, we're all in the same boat. And we've all had those days where we, haven't made it further than between the couch and the fridge. for whatever reason. And, there's been real reasons, deaths and jobs and so on that have given us real reasons for being demotivated and not making it through, etc. But as you say, if you can get it down to a day by day and each day just gets better and better, don't compare yourself to where you were in 2019. If you can just compare yourself to yesterday and you've made progress or you've ticked off some tasks or you got one more hour done than you did yesterday, you're actually being successful in today's disrupted world. Would you agree there, Meredith?
Absolutely, Peter. I mean, sometimes, especially as postgrad students, we're high achievers here. So we set our goals pretty high, and they can't stay that high every day. We've got to have ups and downs. Part of life, 50% is good and 50% is not so good. So we can't be up in that high achiever all the time. Talking about motivation, one of the things around motivation is to have that effort. You want to have learning and motivation to get your effort, get those tasks done. So with motivation, it's if you're feeling a bit demotivated and it's not an external reason for that demotivation, it's just been many days of the same thing. Sometimes one approach is to go back and think about the purpose. Why are you doing what you're doing? And that'll be a different answer for every student or every person for whatever their activity is. So what is the purpose of what you're doing? So if it's a PhD student, for example, it may be because you want to attain that PhD, or it may be that you want to fill that gap in research in that area, or it might be that you want that next progression step in your career. So there's a whole lot of reasons, and if we can think about that, even if you have to stick it on the wall to say this is why I'm doing it, that's a good reason to put it. Then you've got to ask yourself, now, how do I serve that purpose? And that might give you some motivation to go on for that day.
Yeah, I love that, Meredith. I interviewed a lady who's doing her PhD, and she had a slightly different approach. She has some pictures on her wall in her workspace, and she's actually created a space. So she's taken one of the pictures down, and there's a blank space on her wall. And that's her motivation for getting her PhD. I don't know if Yolandi's on the webinar today, but I interviewed her on the podcast, and that blank space on her wall is actually what's motivating her. So she's going to fill that space with her PhD certificate. So start with why, Simon Sinek. That's the practical application of that advice that you're giving. But equally for other people, it might be a sticky on the fridge. It might be just something on. I remember when I was going through my PhD the last 6 months, and I had a sort of detailed week by week plan of getting through all my sections, and I broke that down, and I actually teach it in one of my courses, and I put that up on my cupboard door, and then I would tick off day by day by day by day as I was going through those 6 months. And I knew that if I did 150 words a day, I would get through my PhD thesis. And I was in that crunch period of doing all that writing, but I needed that day by day motivation to get me through. So yeah, Meredith, I mean, I think, some of those things that you're talking about are brilliant. And it's really sounds like you're coming from a point of view of having made a contribution, doing some research, and now you're extending, the knowledge that we have about student success with more research, as I understand that you're doing. So maybe you can just talk about that research that you're doing, and certainly the group that we have in the Student Success Coach community in the Facebook group. And I put the link there if anybody is looking for a group just to connect and to get the encouragement and support that you need. We actually have a mentorship program running in that group at the moment. So you can come in there and say, look, I need a mentor, or you can offer your services as a mentor, and we connect people through the groups. That's all sort of managed through the group. And I think it works quite well. We've got a couple of mentors working, etc. But Meredith, I mean, just communities like this that are focused on student success really seem to interest you, and you're doing some research on them. And I'm going to put the link on the chat now, because I'd really like everybody watching today to click on that link and fill in Meredith's questionnaire, so she's got some data to help her with the research. What are you doing, Meredith? How's all that going?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. So one thing, guys, if you could fill this out, you're going to help both Peter and I, because this is about coaching in general. What are you looking for in a student success coach? So, Peter provides certain aspects of coaching, maybe all of them, and then other coaches fulfill other themes in coaching. So I'm really interested to hear what students that voluntarily sign up for coaching, what are you looking for? And what have you found so far? And I mean, I've had a couple of responses so far, and I can see that the survey takes about 4.5 minutes on average. So it's not a long, please give us that feedback so that we can improve the quality and the content that we deliver for you. Where this comes from, I'm really keen to get students that are voluntarily approaching coaching, because in my background, we provide coaching for all students, and it's group coaching, but it's that they develop personalised learning plans and goals, SMART goals, that we follow through to see how they're achieving and what their investment and their commitment to their goals are. So we help them to develop their goals and keep going with those goals or adapt them if need be. So we'd be really keen to hear what you're interested in learning about there. The students that I've worked with while you're filling it out is I usually ask them what they want to get out of the sessions, and I have an activity that I plan for the next session. So I have sessions of 10 students at a time, and for example, I've got the next one on Monday, and we'll be looking at socialisation in profession. So we learn a lot of analytical data or clinical data or technical data in whatever theme we're learning at uni, because it could be broad in this sense, I guess. But we don't always get the social side of the profession that we're after. So we're going looking at that. How do we connect with those in the profession? Is that a challenge or is it not a challenge? Is this something we want to look at? So the students that I have, they're okay.
So I put it in the chat. I just wanted to tell everyone it is in the chat, guys. So just where they see the chat, it might not have come through. I know there's a slight delay from the broadcast to YouTube, but it will come through in the chat. So Jalal, it'll be in the chat. So please click on it. But Meredith, go ahead.
If you can't find it, I can also add it in as well, and you can click on another.
Please do. Please do.
Yeah, we'll have a go at that. Let's see if this works.
Yeah, go ahead.
Different link, because I just did it.
Yeah, perfect. No, absolutely.
Does that come through?
I mean, I'm sure it will come through now. Let's trust the technology. I'm sure it will absolutely work. No problem at all. So Meredith, you were saying, I mean, you rely on different data sets, etc. And then, I mean, I guess I'm interested, and we had a research proposals webinar 2 weeks ago, and we were talking about writing research proposals. And I guess you're past that stage now. But part of that is, a good thesis statement, a statement, but then also to have some sort of hypothesis. So, I mean, you've been in the field now. Do you have a bit of a hypothesis about what you're anticipating to find in the data and the analysis that you could maybe break down for us, in a couple of sentences, the sort of voluntary willingness to get the kind of coaching that people like you and I offer students?
You know what? I actually, I should have had a hypothesis, but I wanted to be open-minded here. I have not asked any voluntary students, and I wouldn't want to bias the comments that might still be coming through. But I would expect it to be quite varied based on what I've seen with the students at our faculty. And they're all undergraduates. I must admit, we don't offer it to postgraduates at this stage. So they're in their later years and then transitioning into practice, but my component is research-based. So looking at research in practice. So they're looking to connect with researchers in practice and how they go about that, but also just any challenges. Some of the themes that we have at uni are around problem solving, oral communications, written communications, integrity. Do we understand our integrity? What else? Teamwork. So research often requires a lot of teamwork. So what are your strengths that you bring to that team, and what are the other team members' strengths, so that you build a team of the different traits and skills that you need for the research. What else? Inquiry, asking questions, coming up with options, and providing those to your supervisors rather than expecting responses from supervisors. Yeah, so I'd be really interested to see whether I would have loved to do this pre-COVID to see if stress is more of an issue, but I do find that in the last half of last year there was a lot of the students wanting to talk more about stress and wellness and isolation. So connecting, teamwork, and wellness, really.
Okay. So we just got a question there from Cara. So she didn't just quite catch your field in terms of your pharmacy and pharmaceutical sciences education background. And I happen to know that Cara is going into her master's in pharmacology, and put some more detail on there. But I have a feeling her question might be, maybe opening up whether you might want to be in touch with her. But can you just touch on your pharmaceutical specific experience, just to help Cara understand exactly what you do in that field?
Okay, so I work for the Faculty of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences. I have a Bachelor of Pharmacy degree. I took a different path, so I haven't gone down the traditional master's and then PhD, although I teach the master's and PhD students, which is an interesting journey for me. But I think that times have changed. I don't think that that's necessarily the case. We all need our postgraduate degrees now to get our roles in pharmacy and pharmaceutical sciences these days. So, except my experience with my mentors have allowed me to publish many papers and complete research without that structured approach of the degree. So I had those supervisors. It just wasn't formalized.
Yep.
But I'm happy to, I now supervise. I train both higher degree research students in supervision and all of those. I coordinate the units for the research components of the Masters of Clinical Pharmacy, and also interns going into pharmacy.
Okay, interesting. Well, I mean, you and Cara can connect because you both are in the Facebook group.
Sure.
So you guys can pop each other a message there as well. I just wanted to pick up on what you said just now about, sort of question-based coaching. And, my sort of perception on it would be that, the coaching that I've done over, 25 years of being in a corporate career, and then more recently focusing on students, there's definitely a theme whereby you need to facilitate a person's journey, and it's got to be theirs, and they've got to take some initiative along the way. But the sort of question-based approach to that coaching into action, if it's question-based, it's a leading approach, that where you choose questions, very carefully and thoughtfully, can help that student or that person in that coaching into action, take different directions. And I have had some extreme cases where I have to be a little bit more specific and really just kind of be a bit more directive, etc. But most of the time, that question-based approach to coaching, and I think there's a lot of us on here and in the group as well, that voluntarily do mentoring and coaching and help other students, etc. And even just peer-to-peer coaching. Very often, we're all helping each other. And for me, just what you said about the question-based approach, I think was so powerful.
Absolutely. I think with a question-based approach, it allows you to develop your own awareness. So, at uni, we get a lot of direction. And we want to know what is our awareness about that particular issue, or, next direction, etc. And then it empowers the person to take that forward.
Yeah. Fantastic. And I mean, you were also talking a bit about just the isolation leading to stress, etc. And there was another lady that I interviewed on the podcast, and she was part of the wellness team for the bank where I work here in South Africa. And pre-COVID, she was going into her master's degree to do a lot of research on how wellness supports bank employees. And we can imagine we've got call centers, people that are sitting, on calls with customers all day, and there's certain stress levels that are introduced because of that. And midway through, I think, and she was about to start her data gathering, we got locked down, and she quickly pivoted her research then to bring in that isolation aspect to it as well. And so she really studied, and maybe I will connect you as well. But she also put a lot of time and effort into then gathering data from a large group of employees across the bank about what their response had been to the lockdown, and how wellness teams within the bank where I work could then adjust their response and support to them.
Absolutely, Peter. That's a great example of adaptation. What she was doing, about to start data collection and pivoted to isolation. So that's why I say sometimes whatever your plan is, your plan can change each day. And particularly at the moment when we're in a world of uncertainty of what's next.
Exactly.
If we can learn that adaptation in a positive way is okay, and we can learn to use strength, it's really good. On isolation, some of the techniques we use on any kind of issue or stress, if it's acute, is to think of some of the things that are really important to the wellness cycle. So I can chat about those if you like.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, so for an example, I was just thinking about the isolation, and one of the students that I had and said, I feel totally isolated. This is my last year at university. I really need to connect with people, and I'm really nervous about using the online technology. I'm not speaking up. It's stressing me. So I asked them about some of the wellness dimensions and how they are affected by that stress. For example, what happens to your breath when you think about that stress? So you're about to go on to one of your lectures or group workshops, and you think about what happens to your breath. And think about adapting your breath to make that a more positive experience. What can you do with your breath to improve that experience? Because that experience is still going to happen. You're still going to go to your workshop, and that can really provide you a different path through that workshop or meeting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but give us some advice. I mean, so now let's say I'm going into a presentation and I'm feeling nervous. My breath is going to start quickening, I would imagine. It's going to start getting a bit more shallow as my body responds to the sort of fight or flight, mentality of it. And I've always, tried to embrace that nervousness because all public speakers get nervous. But on the topic of breathing, how would I then breathe differently to help me be more successful or to manage my stress better in that situation?
So there's quite a few different techniques for breathing, but just a very simple realization that your breath is quicker before you start that. So you sit down, take a couple of minutes before the meeting is about to start, and make sure you're all prepared, and then give time for your breath and just take 4 deep breaths in and then, out again. Inhale and exhale with 4 seconds for each, just to calm everything back down. And then you might find that you have a very different experience to what you were expecting. Similar to, say, another dimension, which is movement or exercise. But let's say movement. Sorry, I'm just reading Carly's mention there.
No, I just put it there because it talks to your movement and exercise right now.
Yeah. So with with movement, when we're sitting there all day, we get more tense and we want to work harder and we want to write more words and we want to achieve our goals. But sometimes we need to realize that we're tense and that we have to take a different movement. So just changing our movement, standing up, going for a walk and coming back will change your mindset, and you may find that you'll write differently and you won't have that stress as you go forward.
Mm.
It gives you a chance to
yep.
change.
Just keep your body moving. I mean, they say sitting is the new smoking.
That's
you know,
right.
so now we're all forced to sit. And I think, you know, those of us that had these sort of little watches that monitor your steps and everything, I never really got onto that craze. But, you know, you could do 2 or 3 kilometers walking around an office block during the day, you know, and I always felt that running between meetings, literally,
Yeah,
you know, in a crazy corporate
exactly.
life, or running between lectures from one side of the campus to the other side of the campus, it just kept you busy, kept you motivated, you know, it kept the blood going, it kept the metabolism going. But now we literally sitting, you know, and like we said earlier, that can start from 7:36 in the morning all the way through to late at night. And just your point about being, moving, going for a walk. I mean, it's good common sense, but great to be reminded of that today. And I guess, Carly, another thing, and I don't know if you agree with this, Meredith, but what I've seen people doing a lot more of is having standing desks.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can get really good standing desks so that you're actually standing while you're working, and you put your laptop up. And then, in fact, Winston Churchill only ever stood at a desk. I don't know if people know this, but you know, he ran England standing up at a desk when he was prime minister there. So it's just an interesting fact there for everybody. But look,
Ahead of his time.
I've never cottoned onto it myself either. He also only got out of bed at 11 o'clock in the morning. He never got out of bed before 11 o'clock. So very, very interesting man. But, you know, just the application there might be for people to consider just at their workspace. I mean, just maybe get some books and lift your PC up a little bit so that your body is standing, and the activity of keeping your body upright actually is exerting, you know, some of that energy, which when you're sitting is going to go into the wrong places, I guess, you know, and then start the weight increase and the body related stress problems, because the body will absorb a lot of that stress. But if you're not moving your body, it's got to do something else with that stress. Am I on the right track here?
Yeah, and to add to that though, Peter, even if you're standing, don't stand all the time. You've got to move on the standing position as well. So you might feel it in your shoulders or your back. And so you need to just do, you know, set a timer if you need to stretch or change. And it'll also change your thinking. And there's lots of different options for that too. If you've got a lot of deadlines and you're time poor, put the call on your mobile phone and go for the walk.
Yes.
And just have a change in your day so that you're not sitting or standing for the rest of the day.
Yeah. No, that's such good advice.
Answers.
Yeah, Meredith, thank you. And I just thinking back to our chat about doing presentations and so on, and you made an important point about being prepared. And I think, you know, I've always found that I'm more stressed if I'm not as prepared as I should have been for something. And I mean, before we came on the call, we had some technical issues which we managed to resolve about a minute beforehand. And that's sometimes nothing that you can do about it. But at least if I've got, you know, my slides and my story, and I can anticipate the questions and I've run through it beforehand, you know, I might breathe quickly just because of my nerves, but I rely on the fact that I prepared well. And once I get into it, you know, that preparation pulls me through. So I've just put a link into a course of mine that will teach you, everybody on this call today, about, you know, how to do effective presentations. And the tool that I teach there, and the basics and the sort of more advanced features, is of PowerPoint. But I talk about, you know, calming your nerves and going into a public speaking situation. And now it can be a little bit more online than in person, etc. And sometimes the online aspects brings in even more nerves, because you don't know how you come across on the other side. You don't know what people are doing on the other side. You know, when I would present, even if it was a room of 100 people, I could sense the body language. I could make eye contact with individual people. Now I'm just looking at a very impersonal webcam on my laptop. You know, sometimes I put a smiley face there if I'm recording, you know, courses or stuff like that to keep the engagement going. But I can see you now, which is great, and everybody can see us. but very often, there's slides, you can't see where you are, etc., and there's etiquette issues and so on. So these are all real issues that we're all facing, whether we're working or studying or doing both, I guess.
So true, Peter. Bringing in that and the stress around those changes and how things can be and how prepared you are can play a real factor in how things go. At the same time, making sure you have a balance of some type of fun. As you said, you put a smiley face up in the top corner. So what we say with one of the dimensions of wellness is to ensure that in your work that you have an element of play. Now, play doesn't mean, go and have a game of football or whatever, but to have something that you enjoy in that work. So whether it's face up the top that you can look at and laugh at, or whether you set yourself a little game of how many papers can I appraise in, a week's time, and then set yourself a personal best, or something that, relates to you that's going to make it fun. And an example of that for me was I needed to go and see one of the general manager of the faculty, and I was thinking about all these things and I was stressed about what I was going to say. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to make it fun, and I'm going to do a mind map with different colours and just work it out that way. And I took the mind map with me. I never used it, but it just helped me get myself into the right position and have a lot of fun with what I was about to do in a very stressful situation. So bringing those things in to, add that into your task list to make sure that there's some element of play in there really helps.
Brilliant, Meredith. I love that. And I think we often do get a bit too serious. And sometimes we have this belief that, everyone else is serious. And, possibly in a work context, sometimes there's a bit more formality, but most of the great leaders and managers that I've seen have always tried to just calm everyone down and bring in a little bit of a fun aspect to it. And good lecturers and supervisors will do that as well. And I think what you're suggesting is just to experiment with that. As long as it doesn't detract from the content or the purpose of what you're trying to do, there are some things that you can do that just, bring in that element of relaxation and chat. And certainly if you're doing a presentation, if you're presenting a proposal, or if you're defending a dissertation or whatever, absolutely, just bring in a little bit of a fun aspect, right up front, or just maybe when you detect the mood is a bit, stale, just bring in some laughter, and use techniques that are authentic, I guess, for you as an individual. And maybe just the last sort of thought, just linked to that aspect of having a little bit of fun, and I've put the link into the chat here. I interviewed a lady on the podcast, and she talked about how you must be kind to yourself. And so pick the elements of fun that sort of make it interesting, etc. But then also pick the things in your life that you could look forward to and that you can reward yourself with once you get through difficult patches, once you overcome stress, once you've completed a presentation or a meeting, whatever the case may be. And if it is that walk and you get the exercise done as well, that's fantastic. Or maybe it's something you've wanted to buy for yourself. That might be a little bit of a luxury. Do those things. Reward yourself. You've made an accomplishment. You've got through a task. You've got through a presentation. And train yourself, not to be a slave to those rewards, like Pavlov's dog, but that there is an upside that maybe you have to create, given that we're more isolated now, but you have to take an active role in actually creating for yourself potentially.
Great. I love that.
And for me, yeah, for me, it will be a walk. I take my dog for a walk and just get out in that fresh air, and listen to a podcast. I love podcasts, etc. But for other people, it could be anything. Going, and having a spa treatment, or going and buying a book. Look, obviously, we're not. I think going to shops much these days anyway. But there's so many different ways in which we can reward ourselves. And as this lady said in the podcast, be kind to yourself. And whether it's a big milestone like getting your degree, or just in assignments and progress during the week, do those things so that you look forward to them and you do reward yourself.
And when you say reward yourself, Peter, it's not just those big ticket items either. It's those little ones every day, like moving the sticky note across, or giving yourself a pat on the back, or, you know, going down and buying something special for yourself when you've got to a certain milestone is really good. But, you know, the celebration is in, you know, kind of the context of what you're doing. But you do need to celebrate those smaller milestones as well, to get you to the bigger one.
And Meredith, just go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I just saw, is it Gianna's comment on sleep and sleep cycles?
Yes, this one. Okay. Aretha.
Yeah.
Yes, Aretha's a regular. Hello, Aretha. How are you?
Oh, that's a different one. Okay, we'll go to Gina first. We'll go to Aretha.
Aretha, okay, Aretha, and then Gina. Okay, well, let's put it. There's Gina. Go for it with Gina's sleep cycle.
Hi,
I haven't
Gina.
read this one yet.
Okay, yeah, that's about sleep cycles. Now, this isn't coaching, by the way. This is from a professional sleep physician who's given me this advice, but because I used to work on the respiratory ward, so this is not my advice. But what they suggest to do is, if you want to change that cycle, if it's not suiting you, then you change it by 15 minutes or half an hour every day. So you move it back. So you might need to go to bed at 1:30. You may not sleep that first night, but you must get up at 10:30 in the morning. You must not sleep until 11. And then you just do that for 3 nights and bring it back half an hour each time, each 3 days. So you're slowly getting to the cycle that you want to. But you've got to be committed to that. You've got to set it as a goal yourself.
And Meredith, would you say devices out of the bedroom, looking at a screen just before you fall asleep? And I know we all do it. We're all guilty. But if there's one thing we can enforce today, it's just, please, guys, just get that blue screen or that illumination out of your eyes at least a half an hour before you actually want to go to sleep.
Absolutely. An hour if you can, but at least half an hour. Yeah. Do some reading. Listen. You can listen for a bit if you need to. And do a meditation, or if you're into mindfulness, that type of thing, or just stretching can really help.
And I mean, my sort of thoughts on Gina's point here, I think related back to the exercise discussion that we've had, where, you know, perhaps during the day we're not getting as much physical exercise, so our body actually isn't feeling as tired as it normally would be if we were running around a campus or an office environment, etc. And so we have to be a bit more intentional and purposeful about going to the gym or doing some exercise to help our body fall asleep better when we come to actually lying down. And I certainly find on the days that I've done exercise, I fall asleep a lot quicker. So Gina, that might be something just to think about. And be a bit more intentional about. And by all means, put a task up on your Kanban board. If you've all gone through my course, and I put the link there for you guys to do that, put a Kanban task up on your board to say, go to the gym. You know, I love swimming or going for a walk, etc. But choose what it is that you want to do to keep yourself moving and physically active, so that when you come to sleep later on, you are able to fall asleep a bit better. Would be my thoughts.
And the same goes for your meal times as well. So, you know, when you don't have your routine of university, you might not eat breakfast before you go, so you're eating at a different time as well, or missing your meals. So bringing back that routine, even though that you're at home, is really valuable to get your sleep in the right place as well.
Yeah, fantastic. We've covered so much ground, Meredith, and just to sort of last question, where to from here now with your research, and what are your sort of timelines that we can, obviously, hopefully we've got some good data coming through on the questionnaire, guys. If you haven't filled in the survey, please go and do that. But now, you know, what does that pathway look for you in the future?
Yeah, so I'll have a look at those results, and we'll do an analysis. We'll hopefully get back and present some of that to you if there's enough data there that I can do that to make some sense and bring it back to coaching for Peter and myself and whoever else is interested. And for me, what it means is that I'll be able to look at the different areas. I coach in 2 different areas. I coach for students, but I also coach for areas of transition. So looking at particularly women, it seems, in the voluntary area, women transitioning from a workplace to home life, or from after having children, going back to the workplace or studying again. So looking at different transitions, and it's the same thing for students. They've just got different challenges because the different ages have different stressors on the experience. So I'll see where these different themes fit into those age groups and demographics. And
fantastic.
I'll some results to this group if you like.
And that's your PhD, master's. What is your? I mean, what's that big milestone you're going for?
It's a small milestone. It's just an add-on. So it's part of a certificate of professional coaching. So it's only a certificate but it has taken me 3 years, Peter, to but that's because I keep taking more jobs. They just keep coming at me.
Yeah.
I'm trying to prioritize different things. Yes. And for COVID, the university plus the healthcare sector really needed us back in those areas. So the study went on the back burner for me for that point, but that's an example of how times change and where you need to move and adjust. But this year is my study, so I'll be back on putting the student hat back on.
Okay, fantastic, great. So maybe just, and Meredith, we wish you absolutely everything of the best, and we will continue to support you in the Members Only Facebook group, and look forward to hearing your progress on that. But maybe just to let everybody know that next week we are looking at academic referencing. So we will all have to do referencing in any final report or thesis or dissertation. The scale of it is just going to change, or the number of references that you'd have. And I've put a link to my course on academic referencing on the chat there, but we're going to go into a little bit more detail next week. So please, guys, join us next week at 12 o'clock if you'd like some insights about academic referencing. And I talk about the tips and tricks that I've developed when I did my PhD. And it really is an area where, when I've spoken to students, they, it's not a confident area for them. It's maybe a bit of a grudge that they have to get through, and could be a source of stress. And if you can just get that area sorted, it's going to be one thing that you can reduce stress in. So just talking about wellness as we have been today, I firmly believe that if you can get good work processes going and quick tools and tips and tricks that help you reference quicker and easier as you're writing, so cite while you write in Word and setting up an EndNote reference library. And I've got some tips and tricks between Google Scholar and EndNote, that I learned the hard way. And I started out doing my PhD just keeping PDFs on my computer and thinking that I could name the PDF and then I would know where to go back to and get that information out of it. And by the time I'd done a PhD, I had 1,000 references, but by then I'd learned to properly, put them in EndNote and know how to access them and get them quickly into the final report where I needed them. So we're going to go into all of that next week. So Meredith, please come back and join us next week. I'm sure you're going to be doing some referencing, but I'm sure that you probably have, good work patterns around referencing.
Well, I wish I'd had a Peter back in the day, because I did a similar thing, PDFing everything, putting it into files, and I wish I'd known about EndNote at the time, but Scholar, but so very helpful tools to use there. So please be on those to learn the easy way.
Yeah, no, Meredith, thank you very much. And all the sort of content and coaching and community that I've created here are the things that I wish I'd had, and the things that I'd wish I'd done better to make my academic career a lot less stressful. So the aim is to everybody on the call, to help you reduce your stress, to give you access to the content and the value adds and the support and the coaching that you need to be successful as a student. So there's lots of resources that we put out on the chat today. Meredith's survey is there. Please go and fill that out. Please go and listen to the inspiring success stories on the podcast. Go subscribe here on the YouTube channel so that you can get regular updates. And if there are any questions that come through on the chat of most of the webinars, I actually then put a separate video together on the YouTube channel, and I go through that question, I unpack it, so you can still get the answers to these questions and certainly my perspective on them through the YouTube channel. And of course, all the courses that I provided links to are on Udemy, so please go and check those out. I've got a range of student success related courses. And you're always welcome to pop me a note in the Facebook group. I can open that up for you to go in for free. So please do take advantage of all of those resources. It's my commitment to your success, because it's all the things that I wish that I'd had when I was going through studies as well. And then, of course, also sign up, for the weekly mailing list, and then you'll get values and promotional offers as they come through. But Meredith, it's time to say goodbye, and a big thank you for your time. I'm sure your husband, would like to catch up with you. It's a Friday evening in Australia. We've intruded enough into your home life. So I really appreciate that, and you taking the time to be with us here at lunchtime in South Africa. So good luck with the studies, all the best, and thank you for the fantastic work that you're doing. Keep it up and good luck.
Thanks, Peter, and thanks for the opportunity, everyone. I've put my email there if anyone wants to reach out and have a chat at any time.
That's very kind of you. Thank you, Meredith. Appreciate that. Goodbye, everybody. Have a super Friday to everybody. Good weekend, and we'll see you next week for academic referencing tips and techniques. Cheers, everyone.
See you.